All right. Okay. I am so excited to have this amazing conversation today. Welcome, everyone. I'm so grateful that you're here with me and my guest, Christi. I'm going to introduce her in just a second, but this is an incredible conversation we're having today on the right to thrive, getting the support you need to be successful in your business. And if you don't know, this October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And for those of you who have been following, pretty high profile cases like the one of Gabby Petito, it really got me when I saw that this incredibly ambitious woman, young woman, who was building her brand, was, creating this business as an entrepreneur, aspiring influencer, and not getting the support that she deserved from her partner and probably even other people in her life. So that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. And let me introduce my amazing guest, Christi Hedstrom, who is a fellow coach. Christi, would you introduce yourself and share a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks, Alexandra. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I'm an executive leadership coach. I work with business leaders, and I found that most of them are spending way too much time, too much of their days dealing with difficult situations and difficult people. And a lot of our work is to help them gain some control and some clarity and some calm around their day, with that ultimate goal of helping them make more money, create that vision of themselves that they want to experience, and to just generally have more meaningful relationships with people. I would say that my overall mission is to help people prosper. And, it was interesting that you say the thing with the whole incident, particularly early on, rolling out with Gabby Petito. It really engaged my interest as well. And I've looked at a lot of the news through this lens of the importance of being in relationships with people, and not just necessarily your romantic relationship, but it could be your parents, your friends, other people around you, and to be in supportive relationships, and in a relationship that gives you the space to work on your website, that gives you the ability to be who you are, and doesn't maybe say that you're certain things, like I think you may have heard in one of the reports that, where it was said that she was crazy, right? And so I'd love to, have this opportunity today just to discuss, like, what are some of those boundaries and some of those expectations that as entrepreneurial women we can expect to be there for us, and how they will help us excel and succeed.
Yes. Oh, I'm so looking forward to diving into this conversation. So for those of you who don't know, I am a brand and visibility coach, and I work with mission-driven entrepreneurs and influencers who want to be seen, be heard, share their voice, and really get out in the world because they have a big mission and message. And, as I say that, I say your voice. A lot of times, particularly women, we're not really using and sharing our voice. And we're going to get more into this in a minute. But I wanted to just share, when I work with clients, I usually work on a 5-step process. And so the first thing that we do is we clarify their vision. And that is to see, the big picture of what it is that you want to accomplish, your intentions, your goals. And then the second thing is to create a plan for action, because you can have the best goals and intentions and you still need to take inspired action. And so I think that having that plan is crucial. And the third thing is to up-level or upgrade your skills, finding out where you might need additional knowledge, or maybe there are some things that you can learn, or maybe you can hire different professionals or find other resources that can support you to grow in an area where you're deficient. And then the fourth thing is to optimize your environment. So this is looking at, this could be your physical environment. Like I always use the example of my desk is a little messy. And whenever my desk is a little messy, that gets me a little chaotic, right? But the environment also includes who is around you. So not just what is around you, but who is around you. Your people who live with you, your family, your friends, colleagues. It could be a lot of different things, but in this context, I think the people around you is a huge factor in how in making sure you optimize your environment. And then the fifth thing is to master your mindset, emotions, and ultimately your psychology, right? So just making sure that we have tools in place to raise our level of awareness of what's happening, with our mindset, and also being able to work through any blocks or saboteurs, as I say, that might be getting in the way of you being successful. And so today we're gonna focus on the last two, which is the optimizing your environment and mastering your mindset and emotions. And so I think that, being a young entrepreneur, I started in the corporate world almost a decade. And then when I resigned, I had so much passion, but also I started to realize that there was a lot of things I needed to work through, because when you are an entrepreneur, when it all is on you, it's just amazing. And I'm sure you can attest, Christi, all the stuff starts to come out. All of the stuff that you didn't deal with usually like in a corporate environment. There's other things to deal with in a corporate environment, but when you're your own boss, there's so much additional stuff. Like for me, it was resisting being seen, resisting visibility, and resisting sales. So like all the stuff that I had to deal with. And I got to a point a few years after starting my business that I was a really low point. And unfortunately, I ended up attracting a partner that was not the most supportive partner. And so that's where I see a lot of similarities with what Gabby Petito was saying in her body cam footage, the body cam footage that came out after the stop that they had, the stop in Utah, of having a partner that was not only not supportive, but really, like you brought up the crazy word, that brought out and also just downplayed a lot of her brilliance, that downplayed a lot of my brilliance. So there's a lot of overlap there. And I wanted to hear what your thoughts were on that.
Well, no, I was just thinking about, if you think about the body cam footage, what we were seeing, what we were hearing when they were asking her questions about what happened, her actions and behaviors were in response to something that we never saw. We didn't know what really led up to that. I mean, there were a couple of things that I heard, but nothing was ever said of them. One of them is that they didn't have water. And another one, they did mention this, that she was shut out of the van. And she was trying to work that morning. And there was a comment where she told the officer that she wanted to work on her website, and she was trying to do that in the morning, and that Brian was preventing her from doing that, and that he really never believed that she could do any of this. He didn't believe in her. And I think that you mentioned mastering your mindset and emotions, and as well as your environment. A lot of times when the part of the environment we're talking about are the people, they sort of intersect. And sometimes I feel like that we may attract people in our lives that know what our limiting belief is. So if you have a limiting belief of, and it may take you some time to get to this, it may look exactly the opposite on the outside, but if I have this belief that, maybe I'm not worthy, maybe I'm just not up for this, maybe it's not the right time, or for whatever reason, we have our own reasons for things. So I have this feeling I'm not worthy, then I may attract people into my life who are going to reinforce I am not worthy, I am not worthy. And if I'm being triggered, somebody's pushing my buttons, locking me out of the place where my water is probably, or locking me out of the place where I want to do my work, then I'm not going to be this balanced, settled, emotionally calm person, entrepreneur, who's going to go and look at my vision and my action plan and think, oh, what am I going to get done today? Because I have this chaos swirling around me. And I think sometimes it happens so insidiously, it's so slowly that we don't recognize that we're in the middle of something that is the opposite of supporting us.
Oh my gosh, you brought up so many incredible points. First, I want to say that, when we're talking about manifestation or attracting things to us, look at the results, look at the things around you. And that is, I call it a mirror moment of what's going on inside. That is the inner, that's why I am a huge proponent of doing the inner work. I am constantly, I know you as well, Christy, we are constantly doing the inner work so that there is no difference between the intentions and goals that we are creating and we want to manifest and what's actually showing up in our lives. And so I remember one particular time, and you mentioned also family and friends, where I actually, when I was in a relationship with one particular partner during when I think was probably my lowest point of feeling unworthy, because I think it all comes down, a lot of times it comes down to those really like deep issues. And I actually started to go to therapy because I was noticing chaos. You brought up the word chaos with my family relationships and chaos with a client. It was a chaotic, it was toxic. And I didn't even see that my own partnership, my romantic relationship was toxic and chaotic. I didn't see it. But as soon as I went to therapy, it was like, bing. And so I'm a huge proponent of therapy. And Christy and I are not therapists. We're not medical professionals. We're sharing this today based on our experience personally and also working with our clients. And we're going to share some information on how you can get supported in a little bit. But really, having somebody outside being able, that's neutral to what is going on, being able to shine light on the areas that we get to work through, that was just huge. So having that, it really, and it was actually, once I started therapy and I did it for several months, that ended, getting that support helped me to get out of that relationship. And I say, it could have ended up leading to escalating into a disastrous situation. So my heart goes out to anybody who is in that situation. There's definitely support, and we'll put that information for anyone who is in need of additional support to get out of a relationship. And I think that even if it's not at a level of domestic violence, definitely there are some warning signs. I think this is a great segue in that. Some warning signs that we can look at to make sure that we're getting the support. Because I also didn't have the full support from people in my family and even my friends. They didn't quite understand, like, coaching, what? Right? Like there was a lot of non-support outside of my romantic relationship as well. And so, you want to share some of the things?
I was just going to say, I think that a lot of times when we picture domestic violence, it's physical violence. And I think our culture, our courts, our families, our friends tend to dismiss the psychological abuse side of it. And psychological abuse is a huge part of what domestic violence is. And it's just not as visible. And I really liked how you mentioned that you were just seeing chaos in all areas of your life, and that, what is within is what we see without. And being able to go to a person who understands relationship dynamics and when, how you can help yourself and create boundaries for yourself and be able to look more clearly at the people that we have around our lives. And once we recognize those people may be people that don't have our best interests in mind, then learning how, if we're able to go no contact with that person, how do you do that? How do you not depend on help from friends who are not supportive? It actually can sometimes backfire your progress. And then, we probably all, and I'm sort of saying this laughingly, but at some point have family members that fall into that category too. And that becomes even more complex, I think, if they're not supporting us, and then how do we maintain any relationship with these people? And so I just wanted to reinforce what you said about therapy, because to have another human being that's not involved in this to validate, I hear what you're saying, and you're not crazy. This chaotic situation is crazy. And if you took one person out of that whole thing, which might be your partner, if you take this one person out, what's left? Oh, there's not chaos left anymore. You put the person back in, there's chaos. That's one of the clearest ways that I can think about this, because it might not just be you either. You may have children and they're pulled into the chaos. You pull the one person out, and what happens? There's calm, there's peace, there's order. And that was a litmus test that it doesn't matter if it's your boss, if it's your partner, your parent, kid. I mean, there's so many places where unhealthy people can have an impact on us and our success in life. Take the person out of the equation, what happens? And if it's simplicity and order, or at least some sanity, then that's kind of the point where you have to start asking yourself some, I think, hard questions.
Yes. And I know we're going to get it. I want to talk about things like competition with your partner as some like potential warning signs. But before we get to that, you brought up something, and that is, you can take the person out, but why did we attract that person to begin with? There are things that I always see, like even disastrous situations in our life, challenges, as an opportunity to look back and see, where can I work? Maybe even a blessing in some cases. And so you can take the person out, but the stuff that the mind, that's why it's so important to master your mindset and emotions. The stuff that I was dealing with, that's why I needed to do the therapy. That's why I need to do, I'm also a healer. That's why I did healing modalities and healing tools to help me work through those things, the saboteurs, because guess what? These things are cycles. I'm sure many of you have heard of this. It's cyclical a lot of times. When you've, especially if you're attracting emotional and actually any type of abuse, a lot of times it's cyclical. And actually, when I was doing therapy, I remember somewhere along the journey, somebody said that the verbal and emotional abuse, the psychological abuse, as you said as well, is the silent killer.
Yes.
Because the physical abuse a lot of times is where people draw the line, but it's that other stuff that they either, like I grew up with some of that, some of the verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and I didn't see it. It wasn't that big of a problem.
Yes.
But if I would have gone to physical abuse, that's where I was like, I would have drawn the line at that point, Right.
I mean, and there's data too that shows that people who have gone through that psychological abuse, emotional abuse, they do have PTSD. They actually do have high blood pressure. They have other stress related disorders, and it can really have an impact on your health. One distinction that I want to make, and you can help me with this, because I just think it's really important, and I'm not sure exactly how to state it. But if you're a victim of domestic violence, physical abuse, psychological abuse, it's not your fault. That person will always try to convince you, if you hadn't done this, if you just hadn't gone that far, or spent this, or went there, or talked to that person, and then we own it. That's not what you and I are talking about.
Thank you for saying that. Appreciate that. We're not at all condoning bad behavior. We're not at all condoning abuse in any form.
And no victim blaming.
This is a higher conversation even than just that. This is us understanding, like this law of attraction, this manifestation process, where we need to be in alignment with the things that we want to attract. And so I don't want to cut you off there, but I know you were going with something, but yes, I completely agree. Thank you for bringing up this point.
No, thanks, because I agree. I think being able to really assess your situation and to go deep inside. If you can still remember, what your skills and your abilities are and all the beautiful things that you're bringing to this earth, and to really begin to focus on those things, that more and more you will attract the people into your life, the resources into your life that will allow you to let these other people fall away. And they will. They can definitely do that. They lose interest when we're no longer interested, really. But I mean, I know it's a much more complicated situation for many, many people. So I'm not trying to, oversimplify it at all. But if we do just look at the two parts around, our environment, just a couple of things, like, do we have a designated place that we work? Do we have a place that's only ours and that somebody isn't actually, going through our stuff or commenting on? Is it a comment not needed zone? Like, how do we set up some boundaries for ourselves that allow us to have a space in our life that we can shine? That is one of the things that it was very unsettling, actually, to me. There's an interview out now from one of Gabby's friends, Rose, and she talks about that Gabby just had this light in her that shined. And then one of the parents also said that to her, or said that about Gabby, one of her parents. And I think that a lot of times people that attract, people who don't have the best interest, our best interests in mind, we are the people who have that bright light. And somebody who doesn't have a light, they want that light. Mm-hmm. And I really, as you begin to get healthier and you begin to set boundaries, your light comes back, because it may just be like an ember. And all it needs is just a little oxygen, just a little space. And then it becomes a little fire. And then it's going to grow and it's going to get bigger. And with that growth in your light, you get stronger, you get braver, you begin to find your voice. There is a whole process here. And I guess I just want to share hope. If you're in a position where you're like, there's no light left. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's there. Just needs some oxygen, just a little bit. And there's so many good communities that you can find, online support communities for whatever your particular situation is. Find some like-minded people and people who have gone through the same thing that you're going through, whatever that might look like. It's just, I think it's so important for us to find that community and to just be validated that we're not crazy. We really weren't. We were in a crazy situation, but we weren't crazy.
And one thing that's really interesting for people like us that are mission driven, we're servant driven. We want to help people. Yes. And that's that light. That's that bright light that people gravitate toward. And at the same time, we want to help, in some cases, our abusers. And we overlook and we make excuses for them. So let's say you mentioned boundaries. So one kind of warning sign are people that don't have boundaries. I remember this one particular partner that I was talking about had no boundaries. There was one time he took my phone and checked my messages. He did it in front of me that I'm aware of. He didn't do it behind my back, but things like that, like not having no boundaries and overstepping boundaries. That's a huge warning sign, a red flag that there might be some things to look at in the relationship. Well, I know you're mentioning competition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just one last thing around boundaries is that if we find ourselves comfortably in a relationship with someone, we have very porous boundaries. They're not clear-cut, healthy boundaries. It's likely that we probably didn't develop healthy boundaries as we were growing up, because if we had, we would never have allowed, right? Mm-hmm. And there's really good reading out there, Google setting boundaries. What are healthy boundaries? some of the information that I was reading, and I was actually working with a specific client and did a lot of research on boundaries. And so much of that was news to me. And, having specific examples of what you can say in this situation that help you to learn how to communicate boundaries. So I would recommend that anybody that feels like the person's not respecting them, they're not respecting their boundaries, to really seek some like targeted help out around that. I think
yeah, and let me just interject then also. I have a book, and I'm going to put it into the comments, because
Nice.
there's actually a book that my therapist recommended. It was called something like Boundaries, When to Say Yes and How to Say No.
Nice.
Because also, as I'm thinking, boundaries are also like, many of us, especially women, we want to overdo, we want to do and do and do without giving ourselves, we don't place boundaries ourselves. So it's the other person sometimes we have to look for, and then we have to also make sure we're placing boundaries. But it goes back, like you said, sometimes it's how we grew up and we didn't learn to place boundaries.
Yeah, we didn't learn that. And, I don't know if you've ever had a friend or been around somebody who is really good at boundaries. Like one of my really close friends, she is super terrific at communicating boundaries. And I have found myself so many times when she says something, I'm like, I would never have thought about that. Like, it's amazing. And yeah, so that's boundaries. I think that's a really good important point. And you had mentioned competition. And, that's tough. I think I shared with you this, I read a statistic, and it said women who earn 65% or more of their household's income are more likely to be psychologically abused than women who earn less than 65% of their household's income. And I'm just saying that statistic because you may have a colleague at work. You may think somebody is just a powerhouse woman who has it all in control, and she goes home and she's being psychologically abused. I think that probably happens a lot more often than we would ever think. And there is this idea about competition. When you're in a relationship with someone who at the very beginning of the relationship is really, really supportive, and you're a go-getter, and you know what your vision is and what your action plan is, and you're upgrading your skills, you're becoming successful. And then all of a sudden that begins to become sabotaged. Oh, do you really have to do that? Like, do you have to go to that TV shoot this weekend on the weekend? Why don't you just call and cancel it? Well, no, I'm actually the person who's the director for this whole program. No, like, I want to go to this. Oh, so you can start seeing like subtle signs where you're not being supported. And then there can just be outright, sabotage that is pretty clear. And sometimes you get to a point where you have to make some decisions between, am I going to continue with this career, or am I going to stay in this relationship with this person? And I think a lot of times people will give up on their hopes and their dreams in the hope that they're not, that they're going to be able to salvage the relationship with this person. But what's really happened is that this person always saw you as competition from the very beginning. But they needed to win you over. And once they've won you over, they've got you really, really good, then they can really like let that mask fall, and you're just competition, and they don't lose. So that puts you in a pretty rough spot, because you probably are living within proximity with that person. Maybe you've given up some of your income or career. You just get in a smaller and smaller place. I think another thing that happens is people get isolated.
Oh, yes.
You saw that with Gabby, right? Move her from Long Island, where her friends and family are. She's isolated in Florida, or, even more isolated in a van, going cross country with someone, so I think that's another sign about, is there competition with your friends? Is there a desire to keep you to themselves and keep you isolated? Yeah. So what do you think about competition?
Yeah. So as you were speaking, I was just remembering that the particular relationship that I was mentioning, when I really became full out into my entrepreneurship journey, was somebody who was love bombing me, which I'd heard of, but you reminded me about that term, which was just, I was put on a pedestal. It feels good to be put,
Yes.
to be love bombed at the beginning. And then it turned into this, doubting me, or at least placing little thoughts that I began to doubt myself. We had different levels of education. I was much more educated than him. And so he would make comments downplaying my education and upplaying his success without education. That was a huge competitive one. He also, I don't know how else to say it, but kind of like made fun or downplayed the fact that my family had maybe more money than his family, and how my upbringing, had more, that I was, and I was not upper class, but I was upper middle class, let's say. And so he wasn't. And so there was just like, looking back, of course, hindsight is 2020. And that was so competitive, and I didn't understand at the time. But you mentioned sabotage, because there were little things that somehow he would manage to sabotage, things like and I was also a publicist and other things. So me getting my success, me stepping into the spotlight, it's like I couldn't outshine him.
That's right.
He needed to be the one. He needed to be the bigger, the brighter light. But it wasn't from a place of servanthood, like being a servant, servant leadership. It was from a place of ego.
And
again,
a lot of times, it's definitely ego, and in the negative sense of ego.
Yes.
And it was at your expense. That if you're living with somebody, or boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, that should be a place of security, a place of happiness, a place of support, just surround yourself with people in your life that support you and that love you. And the thing about it is, I'm not sure that, particularly as women, we're not really told this, but we're directing our play here. If life is a play, I'm the director, then why am I hiring actors here that are creating misery in my life? Like, that is just it's not logical to me. And to really come to a point and do the work, because there's a lot of work, that you begin to feel comfortable that you're worthy to have the best actors and the best actresses you could ever have in your play, and that know that you're the greatest director ever. Just, you're creating it. I'm creating it. And I just want to create the most beautiful, business. I want to create the most beautiful life. I want to create a legacy for my family. I have all of these goals and dreams, and I just can't emphasize enough that probably 80% of moving forward on the journey is inner work. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. It's like you feel like that you've healed something, and then something else will come up. And you feel like you heal it, and then it comes up in a different form.
Like I say, like peeling back the layers of the onion. Like, you heal one thing, you work through something, and then there's another layer there that we need to work, that we get to see, and how it shows up even could be so interesting and unexpected as well.
Absolutely. And it's like you're in an upper level course on your human journey here of spiritual growth, personal growth, right? I think it's a gift. And I think that once a person gets enough space, enough distance from a person who may not be supportive, I think that you can begin to sift through it. What was the lesson here? What did I learn? Where is the gift? What can I do moving forward? Right. That's not to minimize anything, though, if you're in the middle of it, if
Right.
you're, if you're find yourself in the middle of it today. But if you're in a position where you're beginning to, create your new life, going back to boundaries, a physical environment that is safe, that is supportive, having the right people in your life, being open to learning what you feel like your limiting beliefs are. Like, how do I sabotage myself? What have I done in the past that I've prevented myself from really letting my light shine? What are those thoughts? Because a lot of times it goes back to our childhood. Somebody made a comment, you're in third grade and they say, oh, you're not smart. Oh, okay. And then, we're wearing that hat the rest of our life.
Right.
And we don't even recognize it. So, I think that, it's always very important to have that vision and that action plan. I think a lot of successful people, they have that. It's when you find yourself day after day not being able to enact that action plan, that becomes a signal to examine what else is going on in my life that's preventing me from moving this forward.
And maybe you
willing.
have the outward success, but you're not happy. And then that's where you look at the the mastering your mindset piece again, because is that something you can work on, or is it maybe you're out of alignment in some other way, right? And you said something, and I think it just kind of comes full circle to like what we decided to call this discussion, which is that right to thrive. You have the right to thrive. You have the right to have big goals and big dreams and a big vision. And you have the right to take inspired action toward making that goal or those dreams a reality. And you have the right to up level your skills, to learn more, to become better. And you have the right to have that space that you talked about, that space to yourself where you can work, where you can thrive in your environment. And you have the right to have support. You have the right to have support. And if you don't have it in your immediate environment, maybe it's joining a community of like-minded individuals. Maybe it's getting therapy if you need it, at least at the beginning, or even concurrently while you're becoming more, while you're working on your success. And you have the right to understand and raise your level of awareness so that you can make sure you're mastering your mindset, right? These are all tools. And sometimes non-supportive partners and or family members don't even want us to get that, because if we are up leveling our skills and if we're up leveling these tools that are helping to improve us, like in my case, the person thought that I was going to leave them and told me that.
Right. That's right. They're perfectly happy with the status quo. Like they've worked for a long time to get you exactly where they want you. And that is not in a place where you declare, I have the right to thrive. I have the right to be happy. I have the right to have all the support in the world. I have the right to go to a therapist. I have a right to be in that group coaching program. I have a right to be in the mastermind. I have a right to have all of these friends outside of this like little isolated group, which has become my life. And when you begin to assert and know deep down inside that you have a right to thrive, there will be changes. But what beautiful changes to have a light inside you that's shining again, and for you to say what you think and not have to live a muted life. Like I don't want to live a muted life. I want to live a loud, audacious life. I want to thrive, right?
You want to be free to use your voice. You want to be free. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, this might be a good time to kind of wrap up, because it's almost like out of this tragedy that happened with Gabby Petito that really sparked this discussion today. We see that there is, first of all, that this issue, there's a light shined on this issue. And interestingly, as I say that, it reminds me that shame is very much a reason why women don't speak up. And even as I said that, it was hard for me to even say that. Shame is a reason, and including for myself, why we don't speak up in a lot of these situations. But we're shining light on it now, on this issue at a grand scale, so that we can start to know the warning signs, understand it a little bit more and potentially start to take steps to improve the situation. And so again, out of this tragedy, there is this bright light that now can start to shine on helping and supporting women and everyone to have that right to thrive. I love that we all deserve and we have the right to thrive. And so, Christi, thank you so much for co-hosting this incredible conversation with us. How can the listeners, viewers get a hold of you, or how can they find you?
ChristiHedstromCoaching.com. And maybe we could put that in below, as well as I'm on LinkedIn. And it's not a very common last name, so it's pretty easy to find me. Thank you so much. I just love how you wrapped this up. I just love, Alexandra, how you created this space for us to have this conversation. And thank you for inviting me and letting me to take part in this. It's been really special.
My pleasure, and thank you for sharing your brilliance with us. And it is my sincere hope and intention that anyone who's listening learns something, and it's in potentially spark something that can really support them to really thrive. And I will leave with one last thing that, it's definitely, if you're not in a physically safe space, or if you need any support, I'm going to put the information in the comments, but there is anonymous confidential help available 24/7 by calling the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or 1-800-787-3224. And definitely encourage, if you're in a situation that's not safe, that you do get that help. That you do get that help. So with that, I want to send everyone so much love. Thank you for watching. And until next time, we'll see you. Stay safe and stay thriving. Bye, everyone.
Bye.